Hello, welcome to what is episode 4 of the Food Waste Matters series, where we continue to bring experts within the food industry to talk about all things sustainability, food, rescue, redistribution, and today focus particularly on their environmental journeys. We're going to cover some real-world examples, highlighting both successes and unforeseen challenges. So very much the truth of what people experienced. We have individuals and organizations represented who are at different stages of their sustainability journeys, both as people and individuals. And even though every organization is going through its own unique journey, we think there will be a lot of shared learnings that people can pick up on. So if you're an individual or a business that has started its own journey, it should be really useful to kind of see what people before you have, challenges they face and how they've overcome them and the things they've put into place. Like I said, this is episode 4 of the webinar series. If this is the first time you've joined us, you can catch up on previous episodes on the Felix Project's YouTube channel. And there will be a recording of this webinar available shortly afterwards as well. So I'll quickly go through the format. We've got our wonderful panelists who are each going to talk a little bit about their insights and their journeys. We're going to kick off with introductions, which we all love doing our intros. I'm going to go first and then I'll pass over to the other panelists. So I'm Paul Baines. I am supply manager here at the Felix Project. We are a surplus food rescue and redistribution charity. We work with 300 or 400 different food supply businesses, food businesses, and we in turn support over 1,200 smaller frontline charities, community organisations, primary schools across London. And the work that we do has a big impact in terms of sustainability, environmental impact, and also social good as well. To give you an idea of what we did last year, we prevented nearly 18,000 tonnes of embedded CO2 from the food surplus that we rescued, the equivalent of 38 million meals. And we hope through this series and working with our partners, we can continue to do that as well. So next, I will pass over to Hugo, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Hugo. I'm the sustainability lead at Abel Cole. We are an online retail platform primarily focused on grocery products, fruit and veg boxes being our core business. We've been around 37 years, and in that time we've been on a very long journey with food waste, and we're proud to say we've been working with the Felix Project for 5 years now, I believe. And yeah, we've got a lot of insights to share when it comes to my turn.
Brilliant, thank you, Hugo. Dan, do you want to give yourself an intro next, please?
Of course. Morning, Paul. Morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting me on. My name's Dan. I am the Change and Transformation Manager, but specialising in ESG for GXO. So GXO are a third-party logistics company, specialising in loads of different areas, from kind of retail to grocery to technology. But specifically, I work in the area of food and drink for GXO. And even more specifically, work on our contract that we have with Green King. So what we do is we take all of the supply from Green King's providers for their food and drink. That comes into our depots, and then when pubs need to order that at a pub-based level, we then get that delivered out to their pubs. So yeah, really look forward to chatting through, hearing what other people have got to say, and hopefully being of help to some other people as well.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dan. And Louis and Sarah, you're up next.
Yeah. Hi, good morning. So my name's Sarah. I'm personal assistant, office manager, people partner, a bit of everything here at Bowl Foods, and we're a plant-based company. We do meals, soups, and drinks that all focus on protein and getting that into people's diet through plant-based delicious recipes. We celebrated our 10th birthday this year, but we're also a certified B Corp. So we'll be chatting through that journey today and how that's influenced our decisions in terms of managing food waste and partnering with the Felix Project, which we've been partnered with them for like over 5 years now. Louis is sat with me.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. So I'm Louis, supply chain executive at Bowl. So I look after day-to-day supply chain and demand planning. And I've been here for 9 months now, and my job is to make sure we have the right product on the right place and at the right time. So with strong availability, but as little waste as possible. So a big part of that is working on forecast accuracy, basically. So thank you for Felix Project for giving us the opportunity to share today how we manage waste, basically, why packaging matters, and how our partnership with you at us give surplus like a second life, basically. So happy to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louis and Sarah. And yeah, thanks to all our panelists for joining us here today. Like I said, it's your industry insight and expertise that people are coming from and really going to benefit from. So without further ado, we'll get kicked off. Hugo, you are first up.
Sure, thanks very much. So as I guess kind of teased in my intro, Abel Cole, we're an online retail platform and we're direct to consumer. So we have a USP that we actually own our own delivery fleet and manage our own supply chain direct to the customer doorstep, which gives us a lot of kind of unique opportunities when it comes to reducing waste across the supply chain. So talking about packaging, but also food waste, which kind of comes as a result of that. Our products are packed the day before delivery as loose as possible in reusable cardboard boxes, which are then dropped at the customer doorstep and exchanged with the previous box and all of the packaging material. And that's something that we've really fine-tuned over the years. We've been operating this specific system in a few different sort of like with a few tweaks to how it works, but we've been operating like this for about 15 years now, so it's very embedded within the operation. And the way that the business was started was to bring organic fruit and veg to the public in an affordable and convenient way. And that's still very much the core of the business. We're still an organic certified business, and we have very, very long held relationships with our farms. And as I mentioned before, the core of our business really is about fruit and veg in these kind of planned boxes. And that's really sort of the start of where our food surplus journey begins in terms of the procurement of fruit and veg. For other products, I'll get to that in a minute. But for fruit and veg specifically, what our supply chain managers do is that they agree and forecast the sales for the subsequent year or the subsequent growing season with the farmers. And when it's a product like potatoes or onions that grow from seed or bulbs, they will agree in advance for the next growing season what should be planted on our behalf by the farmers. And we'll plan our sales based off of what's achievable by them. And we might add some extra farms in if we don't think we're going to be able to get enough, although that's usually not the case in a lot of situations. Farms will not be able to sell all of their product and we'll end up taking on some of the surplus from them, because if anybody's ever been to a farm or a food distribution hub, there's just so many unpredictable elements when it comes to this category of food. But we also, because of those long relationships, we have a very, very good mutual understanding of the quality expectation that we have from our suppliers, and we try to control the quality when it comes in. So when the product arrives to us, we have a team of technical experts who will assess the quality of every single batch of fruit and vegetables that come through the door, and they will then be stored in a series of different fridges appropriate for them to maximize the shelf life of those products. If anything is rejected, because of the way that we operate, where we pack all of our customers' boxes the day before in a central hub, we're able to quarantine it and donate it immediately to local charities, or primarily via the Felix Project, who are able to collect so much material from us, which is really, really great. On the line, we try not to let things go over their shelf life. So anything that has stayed in the fridge potentially too long, we will make changes to customers' boxes, which we will assess based off of what we think is kind of an equivalent value product. So it might be that we have a whole pallet full of bunched carrots with the stems still on, that we need to use. So we may swap something out, like a pepper, for example, just to be able to use up that product. And that's something that we are in frequent dialogue with our customers about, trying not to make them disappointed. But on the whole, our customers really value the consistency of receiving the boxes in rather than necessarily getting a specific product that they were expecting. So it does go down generally quite well. And then anything that does go over and starts to degrade, either by getting moldy or frequently on the line, if something is dropped and it means it's no longer suitable for human consumption, we collect that internally and we send that out for animal feed directly within our own supply chain. We send it to Helen Browning, who, for any Soil Association members, they will recognize her as the head of the Soil Association. She's our primary pork supplier at Abel Cole, and it's fed directly to the pigs. So it's a really nice circular system that we're able to operate now. It's taken, I think, quite a long time to get to a place where we're able to operationalize that. But at the stage that we're at, it really is a win-win across the operation. Naturally, our production teams have targets about how much product that they waste because it costs the business money. So there's a lot of internal drivers that, outside of sustainability, that want to ensure that the surplus is kept to a minimum. And we have amazing partners who are able to take things off of our hands as and when we need them to. And then I sort of mentioned the other products that we sell. So we do sell products that are in the meat and dairy ranges and pantry as well. Obviously, pantry items have exceptionally long shelf lives. And so anything that does sort of start to go, what we would define as being outside of its shelf life would be anything that we couldn't give to a customer and guarantee them like 6 months shelf life, right? So it will probably still have 4 or 5 months on it. That will go first to staff, because it can be quite ad hoc in terms of what gets rejected. That on the whole, that would be the main outlet for it. And we have a free staff shop where people can just come and take it, within reason, whatever is out of life on a given day. And then we may, in some instances, have a very, very high volume of product that either has the packaging has been damaged in some kind of way, or it's just, again, this is more relevant for the chill products, say like yogurts. It's something that, maybe it's Friday, which is when the Felix project comes to collect from us. It's Friday and the product goes out of life on Wednesday, which means that when a customer receives their order on Monday, because we don't deliver on the weekends, they would only have 2 days shelf life, which is below what a customer would expect. So we just divert that directly to charity. And it's very fluid. I think the single greatest thing that we've done to keep all this running is to employ someone directly to manage it all. And I would say, if there's a single piece of advice I'd give to businesses looking to kind of implement a similar system within their own operations, is value it enough that it's somebody's full-time job. Because our colleague Anya, who coordinates all of this in our operations, is incredibly skilled at communicating with all of the different warehouse teams and all the different charities, making sure that everything, from the second that it's sort of released internally, it has an outlet by the end of the day. And I'd say that really is the key to our success, certainly the longevity of it. And in terms of stats, I'm happy to say that in July we had a record month. So we have a target every year of diverting at least 35% of our food surplus for human consumption. And that's a month. It's a monthly target, but also it applies over the course of the year as well. But in July, we actually donated 69% of our food surplus for human consumption, which was a record for us. And I think, unfortunately for Anya, she's kind of outdone herself, and now she's going to have to try and beat that if she wants to get another record. But I think she's game.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hugo. That was really insightful. I know we obviously work quite closely together, but even for me, kind of seeing how, your operations happen at your end and then coming into Felix, then coming into charities we support in turn as well, it's really nice to try and link those dots as well. So thank you very much for that. And next, we're going to go to Dan, who's going to talk about his sustainability journey with GXO.
Thanks, Paul. So as I mentioned kind of in the intros, we operate a little bit differently to say Cole and Abel Cole, in that we are a third-party logistics company. So technically the kind of the food that we bring in and then distribute out isn't our food, it's of our client Green Kings. So however, with kind of 8 brands, more than 1,600 pubs across the UK, multiple menus, the types of food that we're getting in, there's huge diversity in it and it's really complex. The way that we work with Green King as well is really consultative, and they are really supportive of making sure that there is limited waste. They've signed up to the Quartile commitment for 2030, which is to reduce their food waste by 50%, and they're working towards that as well. So when I kind of talk around us and GXO, I'm very much talking with us working in partnership with Green King as well, because they're really helping to drive all of this stuff too. So my role is to look at kind of sustainability in that kind of the wider holistic sense. So, you know, and I'm really lucky. It's a brilliant role that's done. It's probably quite rare that at a contract level, we have someone that's dedicated to focusing on the whole sustainability agenda. And that goes from everything from decarbonisation, biodiversity, social value, waste, circular economy, all of those kind of principles go across it as well. So we look at a number of projects. I think it's probably fair to say that in the logistics industry, decarbonisation is probably the biggest challenge that we've got. So there's a longer term strategy and work that we're doing with that. And you know, also from, like I said, the biodiversity elements, and where we're picking up here is both the social value and supporting circular economy principles as well. So how do we look to minimise our food waste? I think Hugo touched on it, and we do a very, very similar thing. We have forecasting software that we work closely with the Green King supply chain team. So they will kind of look at what their menus are, what market trends might be. So whenever they're launching a new menu, okay, what's the popularity that we're, you know, how popular are we expecting this to be? What's the season? Say for them, for example, is there a Football World Cup on over the summer? That's going to drive that. So what the forecasting will be slightly different. And again, that changes seasonally as well, depending on, say, Christmas for them is absolute peak. And this is then analysed daily through, we have a rebuy team, so we will then order all of that stock in depending on what those forecasts might be, and say, look, we know how much stock we've got in each of our depots, and then we will make sure that we've ordered appropriately to make sure that there isn't excess stock that comes in with that. But also having to make sure that we have what we call over 99% availability. So that if any Green King pub at any time places an order, we may have to make sure that over 99% of that product is available for them at that time as well. So it's a bit of a challenge, but again, we're really lucky in the way that we work. We've got that resource that's able to manage that as well. We also, to support that, we've got stock analysis software that, which again, just touch on that previous point, just making sure that the levels of stock that we get, what we're ordering in, is going to be moved. And I think, again, following up on what Hugo was saying as well, we have some items that are kind of higher risk and some items that are low risk. For example, you take chips, for example, for a Green King, it's pretty low risk. It's frozen. You know they're going to move out the door. However, there are things like fresh produce, seasonal stuff, where you might have a minimum order quantity that we know is a higher risk, and how do we move that on and get that out to the pubs? Because what we can't do is just shift that problem onto a pub where we wouldn't be able to distribute it to someone like a Felix. It would sit at that pub and then it would become a waste rather than a resource that could be reused. I think it's fair to say that those two elements are pretty standard for a business like GXO's. Of, you know, there is the commercial element of that. It's a pretty easy conversation to be had with kind of finance teams, because it's just a cost base that goes through if you're buying food that you literally can't use. And again, I feel like I'm parroting Hugo a bit here, but I totally agree with some of the things that he said. Where there is often more of a structural challenge, and again, a real takeaway for it is the commitment of resource to manage this process is absolutely key. You know, we've got a client in Green King that takes it really seriously, and there is an expectation around our duty of care to manage this properly. So, you know, we are expected to do this. We committed resource to it. We have resource in our rebuy team. We have resource in our finance team that tracks where it's going. And also we have resource in Green King, and we catch up very, very regularly on that and how that works. So the reason for that is, you can imagine with the volumes that we're getting in, it only takes kind of a percentage point, and that's a huge volume of food. And kind of similar to what Hugo was saying, if we don't deliver to pubs on a Saturday, so if we have stock that we know that we can't get out and that the pubs won't realistically be able to use, we can proactively manage that. And it's that proactive piece that I think is really important, rather than having a panic, going stock that you can't get out, and then just saying, oh dear, what are we going to do about this? And almost, for want of a better phrase, just passing the problem on to someone like a Felix project, whilst patting ourselves on the back, pretending that we've done something good. That's not a sustainable solution. That's not working with partners in a progressive way to help genuinely manage food surplus. It's just not how things should be. So given, like I say, given that we're looking to actually support these charities and work with them, it is really, really, really important that that's done as well. So now we've been working on this process for so long that it's totally a BAU process for us now. It's an expected thing. It's reviewed regularly. Our teams take real pride in hitting those targets and delivering that and where we're going. Generally, we have had a couple of months where over 90% of all the surplus food that we've got has been able to get out. But you know, that's again similar to Hugo's team of how do we make sure that we're keeping up to those levels as well and continuing to drive that? And, you know, whether that's extension of life, however that might work, just making sure we've got the right systems in place. There are kind of wider questions and queries I think it's probably worth just acknowledging as well, around things like how do we work kind of further upstream with suppliers on minimum order quantities, the packaging that comes with that, all of those things. That could be probably a whole separate webinar on just how that works and how that goes. So, you know, I don't want to go too into the weeds with that, but, you know, I just think it's important to acknowledge it. We do also handle the waste from Green King, from food waste that's what we call plate waste or prep waste, so not fit for human consumption. There's lots of works and projects going on with that as well, about how we can reduce that, how we can work with them. So we actually collect that waste. We have adapted the vehicles that we collect to have what we call an underslung, so that the food goes into a tote box. That tote box sits underneath the vehicle, so it doesn't go into the same area where the fresh food is going out to pubs, so we're able to collect that. And by having all of that data and knowing how many totes we're getting back from each of these pubs, we're able to feed back to Green King and say, actually, did you know that you don't have necessarily a problem with this kind of food waste across your whole estate? Actually, it's kind of a, you know, classic Pareto law. You've got 20% of your estate are creating 80% of your food waste, kind of thing. So it helps them to be able to target it and use the resource that they have really effectively. Also, as well, I just kind of want to touch on the benefits that working with people like Felix, and, you know, we also work with, say, City Harvest, bread and butter thing as well, and Fair Share. The benefits that it does bring us to, as I mentioned, I work on kind of the wider holistic sustainability element, and things like decarbonisation are quite hard to engage people on. Genuinely, they are. You know, if you look at a lot of the kind of the data around it, what people through insights and things, decarbonisation is always quite low on what people care about, whereas waste and food waste and all of that kind of thing is always very, very high. So from our point of view, it's a really good way of engaging our people, demonstrating what we're trying to do, and also, you know, simply how it would look pretty poor to our colleagues if they see, you know, pallets of food that's fit for consumption being put into a bulk container. That's not good, you know, simply. So having and working with you guys brings us real benefits as well. There is absolutely genuinely a partnership that we've got with you. So really, I appreciate it been going on for a bit, but yeah, just to summarise, we're really lucky. We've got a super engaged client who takes food waste seriously, and it's embedded now as part of our core service delivery, not just a nice to have or a could you just. It's fully embedded in our operational processes. We acknowledge that our operations are a bit different to our partners as well. We've got a huge amount of resource, massive depots that we can work in and around. So understanding the limitations that you guys might have and how we can work with you to deliver that in. For example, you know, some suppliers are able to collect from our depots, some aren't. So how can we work with you guys to make sure that that's optimized? And finally, yeah, just working really good partners and people and working in that genuine partnership as well to make sure that everyone's winning, essentially. And that's it from me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dan. Someone myself who's a self-confessed supply chain and logistics nerd, I could happily chat about that for hours, but like you said, maybe that will be a topic for another webinar, which, yeah, I'd definitely love to have. Again, please have a little think about what Dan said, any questions that might have sprung to mind as well. And with that, we will now go on to Louis and Sarah from Whole Foods.
Hi, so we have a presentation to share. So just as a reminder to set the context of what I do in the business. So I work as a people partner. So that's making sure we're doing right by our people internally, but externally, making sure as a business that we're living and breathing our values, which includes enlisting and getting certified as a B Corp. So I'm just going to give a bit of context about BOL and what we are, what we stand for as a business, and what our journey to becoming certified and recertified this year actually as a B Corp. And then Louis is going to talk more specifically about how we tackle food waste and surplus food and all those kind of things. So I'll whittle through the history of BOL as a business. But BOL was born in 2015. As I said, we celebrated our 10th birthday this year, and it was actually bought, if any of you guys recognize these products from years and years ago, born out of Innocent. So our founder, Paul Brown, and co-founder, Ed, both worked at Innocent at the time when they had a food business. And when Coca-Cola bought them and they just became a drinks business, Paul, our founder, took away the food business, and then BOL was born and started with a range of products, which include soups, fresh salad jars, veg pops, etc. But at the time, we actually did also have meat and dairy products in our portfolio. So in the first couple of years, we saw success that was surprised, lots of success, great PR, won multiple awards, new business of the year, new product of the year, features in the grocer, and actually made a profit. Obviously, that's quite surprising for a lot of businesses in their first year. But in our first year, we donated 100% of that profit to Action Against Hunger. And at the very beginning, we've always been aiming to be disruptive, healthy, convenient, and getting nutritionally complete food into the hands of people, but always being purpose-led. And that has fed into every decision we've made from the beginning. But then in 2000, a couple of years into the business, we made the huge decision, had what our founder likes to call the cowspiracy epiphany at BOL, and turning plant-based, which is how we're recognised now as a business. So that was completely halving our portfolio, getting rid of all of our meat and dairy products, and making sure there were no animal products in our portfolio and in our recipes. And what led those decisions, that decision at the time, key stats that I'm probably sure a lot of you in the audience are familiar with, but at the time, this is what was like really pressing on our founders' mind. Stats like one burger is like 660 gallons of water, 2 months of showering, like looking at things like livestock and how much coverage that is of the earth, but also considering things that livestock exceeds the emissions of total transportation across the world, which are just crazy stats that we're like surprised to hear, which ultimately led to the decision of removing meat and fish and dairy from our recipes. And through that, like really sparked the conversation, like the real analysis of what we stood for as a business and how we were going to like structure all the decisions that we were making. So I don't know if all of you are familiar, but we have like a triple bottom line approach, and that means balancing people, planet, and profit, and putting equal weight to all of them, and making sure that through approaching a business in that way, that we are looking at how we can save on water, how we can save emissions and farmland, and all those kind of things. So with people, it's looking at our social responsibility externally and internally to people, but making sure in our products and what we're putting out to the world, we're acknowledging the environmental responsibility, and that's through things like packaging, through the recipe that I've spoken about, but also arguably, obviously, we're a business, and we need to think about long-term, how we can make sure that we're profitable as a business. So it's the triple bottom line approach is a triple helix of change for tomorrow's capitalism, which John Elkington, which we view as the authority of corporate responsibility and sustainable capitalism. If you speak to our founder, and say that sustainable development like exists at the very core of all three of those. But what we always say that we aim to be is the Patagonia of the food world. And that's just being a business that like is recognized for being hugely ethical, and not so that isn't something that just exists in fashion and culture. Fashion, it's like food, it is product businesses, and making sure that we're making environmental commitments, we're supporting employees and their well-being and work-life balance, and all these kind of things are what I'll talk about in a moment, but what the B Corp standard helps us keep accountable to. And that's also seen in the people that we employ. So we're a team of only like 25 people working really cross-functionally, but all living and breathing our values and all having a genuine enjoyment and like passion for doing right and making like we're all aligned to what kind of business we want to put out to the world. So then going on to being certified as a B Corp. So we were first certified in 2021, although B Corp is started in the US in 2006. At this time, there are actually not a lot of food and beverage businesses that were certified as B Corp. And it is a very rigorous process. If any of you guys have done it, it takes a lot of time and commitment and thinking to what Dan and Hugo are talking about. You need a person dedicated to do that. And we had someone dedicated to really thoroughly successfully land these kind of initiatives, and we had someone in role who's just like dedicated to doing our B Corp certification. A lot of people externally contract people to do that, but we thought it was something that we want to like internally manage ourselves and get really familiar with. So we have in our team we have beekeepers across the commercial team, across the brand and marketing team, and myself obviously representing the people in the business. So at our first certification, we certified with 83.2 points, which was way above average for a business of our size, and that is made up of 5 different areas. So it's the B Corp assessment, is made up of 5 different areas. So we're looking at things like governance, workers, the community, environment, and the customers. So who we're selling to, who we're selling our products to, and where the Felix project sits within that, and our commitment and how it's represented in our B Corp impact assessment is obviously the community. So what that means is obviously like we have a commitment to. We have 2 days paid volunteering in everyone's contract. So that typically is with the Felix project, but then it's also looking at how we manage our self-respect, which Louis will talk about in a moment. But since we first certified, there is an expectation that when you recertify, which is required every 3 years, that you are showing continuous improvement, that you are like improving your scores. And that has meant things that like our practice and policies have changed, and we're continually reflecting on those and reviewing them. And it's led to things that we've done here, key milestones that we're really proud of. So obviously I mentioned earlier 100% of our profits donated to Action Against Hunger. We like to think that we were a B Corp before it was a B Corp, so it always just felt like a natural fit. A lot of the decisions we were making from early on were really aligned to what B Corp stands for, and that also has meant that we're doing things now like we screen our suppliers against a bold code of conduct, which came about through our certification with B Corp. We added sustainability KPI to our supplier scorecard, to how we work with our suppliers and the expectations that we have in our contracts. We have an average tenure of supplier relationships, which are now over 60 months. We've donated over 100,000 units to charity, largely to the Felix project. And this year, we're very proud to say that we sold 100 million portions of veg since launch. So when we recertified last year, we gained 5.8 points, scoring 89, which we're really happy. We were aiming for 90, but we're happy with 89 because of 5.8 points, that's across all the 5 different areas I mentioned, and like a policy would be the equivalent of like half a point. So it is a really rigorous like process, and there's like a really high level of expectations. If you're familiar with the B Corp movement, you'll know that this year they changed their standards, which is really like up to the bar in terms of how you become certified as a B Corp and how you maintain your certification. And I've stolen this bit here from the B Corp website. It is a bold blueprint for meaningful business actions, and we think that couldn't ring more true. It's really helped us keep to account on what decisions we're making sure that everything that we do is like a really holistic view of how we can be a force for good. And that has influenced things like how we manage surplus waste, which I'll leave on to Louis to tell you about.
Yeah, so after this Ball and B Corp intro, we'll see why Ball must help tackle food waste, basically. So food waste is a huge issue. If it was a country, it will actually be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. So at Ball, we know we have a responsibility here. So when food is wasted, it's not just the product that's lost, it's also the water, the land, the energy, and the work behind it. So when it's gone it goes to the landfill. It creates also methane as well, which is worse than CO2. So at the same time, many people in the UK face for food insecurity. So tackling waste is not only about protecting the planet, but it's also about supporting communities. And as B Corp, of course, this is part of how we work. So it guides our shows and then keep us focused on making better decisions every day. So now how we manage food waste at Bol. So at Bol, we deal with two very different product categories. So the short life product and then the long life product. So for the short life product, we have our soup and white pot meal. So the biggest risk here comes from the retailer forecast inaccuracy. So if retailers under order, we can end up with overstock in our warehouse, which may become waste at our site. But if they overorder, the waste happen in store when product don't sell through. So in both cases, it's a shelf failure because it means collaboration and forecasting wasn't strong enough. And then we have the long life products like our shakes. So the main risk here is linked to innovation. For example, when we update a recipe or change packaging, all stocks sometimes can't be sold anymore. So now, how do we deal with this? So on the prevention side, we update forecasts with retailers 3 times a week. We share information early with sales, marketing, innovation team, and we keep close contact with suppliers that help us adapt before waste happen basically. But if surplus still happen, we plan solution. So a good example of that is our recent shakes packaging changes. So we had 130,000 units that could no longer be sold. So instead of letting them go to the waste, we use them for our biggest ever sampling campaign, giving product in the streets, in the gym, office, events, and we also sent a large share to FedEx project. So even when waste risk appears, we make sure it turns into something positive instead of ending up in the landfill, basically. So in the next slide, we will speak about our packaging now. So for fresh food, packaging is essential. So without it, products spoil much faster and waste increase, basically. At Bol, we use polypropylene for soup and white pot meal, so PP, and PET for shakes. So both things are recyclable at the curbside in the UK. And curb packaging, as you can see on the pictures, also helps customers to see exactly what they are paying, which build trust and make them more likely to pick it up, basically. So that means fewer products are left unsold in stores, which helps to reduce food waste. So we also think packaging in terms of shelf life. So for example, improving packaging quality helps us extend freshness by a few days. And those extra days can make a big difference in reducing waste, especially for short life products, as our soup and the white pot meal. So plastic isn't perfect, but we are open about that. But right now, it's the best option we have to balance food safety, freshness, and waste reduction, while we continue to explore better solutions for the future. Even with strong planning, surplus will always happen. And that's where FedEx project is such an important partner for us. They allow us to redirect products, so the food, that can be sold into something useful. So for example, one of our soup, it's 600 grams, can provide 3 meals. So instead of becoming waste, it becomes nutrition for people who need it. So this partnership also gives us confidence to be ambitious. When we launch new product or update recipe, we know there is a safety net. Surplus won't end up in the landfill. It will be redistributed at the end. So it's not just about reducing waste. It's about the impact because it's fewer greenhouse gas emission, thousands of meals delivered to communities, and stronger link between business and social goods. That's why this partnership is so important for us. It ensures surplus food always has a second life, basically, and that makes a real difference for both people and then the planet.
So just coming back to like why it is a really good partnership. As a food business, we recognise that like a responsibility to not, it's our ambition to put nutritionally complete food in people's hands like wide and far across the UK, and that includes vulnerable people. And actually as in my previous roles, I've worked in homelessness charities. Supporting vulnerable communities is really something that's close to like my personal heart. So the Felix Project is a great way for us to work with them, not only with just surplus waste and managing that, but also supporting the movement to make sure that we're reaching those communities. So we volunteer. Obviously, I won't tell you guys, I'm sure you all know about the great volunteering days that the Felix Project do. We've actually got 6 of our team out on the farm today, apple picking. We've done things like the volunteering in the warehouse, but we also have had Ed, our COO, run London Marathon, and for the Felix Project, we matched his fundraising target as a business to continue to support the Felix Project in every way that we can. We have close communication with Sharon, who goes out every Friday. I know that she distributes products on the street to people, and she often comes up to the office if we have excess products one week to give her. So that would be like our shake suits, all of our products, but also just like really close communication about how we can continue to support the Felix Project, whether that's raw ingredients like date paste, like as Louis said, we've got recipe changes, but final products as well. And then just coming back to like what BOL stands for, our vision is to be our favourite naturally plant-powered food brand, our purpose to be help busy people bring on life and feel unstoppable, and that's across the UK for everyone. Our mission is make nutritionally powerful, tasty food without compromise. So we really like take pride in giving our products which aim to be nutritionally complete in the shakes, in the one-pot meals, and the soups. They're packed with fibre, they're packed with really good ingredients that we are giving those not just to our customers, but people that the Felix Project support. So that's it from me.
Yeah, and just to summarize, basically food should be eaten, not wasted. So by focusing on forecast accuracy, planning carefully across categories, using packaging to extend shelf life, and working with partners like Felix, we make sure surplus create positive impact instead of becoming waste, basically. So that's how we bring our big up commitments on life, just supporting both people and then the planet, both things. That's it for us. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah and Louis. Really good to get some insights on B Corp there as well. I know a lot of the food partner businesses that we work with are B Corp certified, but sometimes something becomes so ubiquitous that you kind of forget the background behind it. It's really good to get some insights on that as well. And then again, from Louis, seeing those things about, forecasting, planning, what people can do, what businesses can do to reduce their food waste. Great to see there's a lot of certainly similarities there as well. So anyone from a food business who's watching, sort of planning their journeys, there's a lot of insights we can pick up from there as well. The first thing I wanted to talk about was our vision and our mission as a charity. So our vision is a London where good food is never wasted and no one goes hungry. And our mission is to rescue good surplus food from becoming waste and to divert it to people most in need. So we focus a lot on the social impact, the work that the Felix Project does with our amazing food partners, but also wanted to focus now a little bit on the environmental impact as well. So if we think of the food that we consume, the amount of resources that goes into producing that, as the team from BOL mentioned earlier as well, the amount of land, water, the carbon emissions as well, that's what we class as embedded CO2. And if food is grown and isn't eaten by people, essentially all of that resources, energy, greenhouse equivalent gases are wasted. It has a massive negative impact. So what we do here at Felix with our food supply partners, by making sure that food isn't wasted and actually goes to people, reduces that environmental impact of food waste. The next part I want to talk about was our own journey as well. So as a food business, we looked at our own impact in terms of what we do. And we always had like a rough idea of what the food we rescued was in terms of an equivalent of embedded CO2 saved. But it's always been a bit of an iterative journey. So before we might have used a single value for all food waste. But back in 2023, we had some support from the wonderful team Argon & Co. They looked at the impact that Felix has and gave us a methodology that made us much more confident in how we could report that. So we looked at the amount of embedded CO2 and resources that were saved by the amount of food that we rescued. We also looked at the amount of prevented emissions as well. So we cast those two things separately. Again, as Louis mentioned earlier, when food is wasted, a lot of methane is produced, which is another greenhouse gas. So again, by making sure that food is consumed by people, we are preventing those additional emissions as well. And then the last one we looked at was our own carbon footprint. We have 4 depots in London, other operations. We have a fleet of vans. We do the transport of food, both collecting and delivering it. That in turn in itself has its own environmental impact. And we wanted to acknowledge that we are recording our own impact as well. And thanks to the work that we did with Argon & Co., they gave us a really robust methodology for reporting and showing our impact, both positive and negative. And with the work that we do, we showed that actually our own carbon footprint, the amount of positive work we do, the amount of CO2 that we, embedded CO2 that we prevented and resources that we saved, was 5 times bigger than the amount we'll be using ourselves to actually save and redistribute that food. And as the Felix project grows and the work that we do increases, we are looking at ways of making sure that we continue to have much higher positive environmental impact, but also making sure that what we do ourselves in our own operations reduces as well. So things like switching our fleet of vans from diesel to electric, bringing in renewable power sources and things like that. So always trying to have an idea of that, we have to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. Last bit I wanted to cover was just about things that we have done ourselves in terms of innovation and collaboration. So over the last couple of years, we've looked at how much food is being rescued. It was lovely hearing the stats from our guest panelists as well, but sadly, less than 1% of good quality surplus food is rescued. So the fact that the teams are Abel Cole and GXO Green King and Bowl are rescuing so much is amazing. We want to then look at ways of how we can access and rescue and redistribute more of that food. So the last couple of years, a big area looked at was frozen food. So how do we take in more of that to distribute it? So making sure our depots had adequate freezers, but also making sure that a large number of the charities that we work with also had funding so they could buy their own fridges and freezers to then carry on that redistribution process there as well. And then in terms of things like collaboration, Dan and the team at Green King, they actually offer us an amount of frozen storage for a large amount of the year as well. So a small thing like rather than having 2 large freezers that are being partially filled, just using one that is fully filled, that then has a really great positive environmental impact. And if that kind of thing is replicated over and over across London, across the UK, across the world, that does start adding up as well. The next couple of bits I want to talk about is some new things that we've introduced. So we've always had our Felix kitchen in operation. So that is able to take food that isn't easily redistributable in the form that it is, turn it into nutritious Felix ready meals. We've then grown on that, and this year we are introducing our Felix Food Factory. So this will be in our South London site in Deptford, and they're going to have 4 main streams of process. This is repacking, freezing, juicing and jamming, and dehydrating. So by using those processes, we can take short life foods. So during the year, we get different seasonal gluts. I'm sure a lot of the charities that we work with at the moment are receiving a lot of courgettes. Next month, there's going to be a lot of pumpkins and squashes. And although they do a fantastic job in taking those items when it comes up, there does come a point where there's a limit of how much we can take with a seasonal gut before we then start having to waste that food, either ourselves or the charities that we support do instead. So the work streams that the Felix Food Factory does, that can then take those short life products and then turn them into longer life products. So the courgettes become some kind of like stocks and soups. Same with tomatoes. The apples that we're picking on the orchard right now, a lot of that is going to be distributed as fresh fruit, but anything left over at the end of the season, we can turn that into juice pasteurize it, give it so much longer life. And that means that, one, we're rescuing more food, less is being wasted, but it also means for our charities, we can then offer them a much more diverse mix of foods during the year. So yes, you'll still get fresh courgettes in August and September. You'll still get the pumpkins and squashes in October, but it means during those winter months next year, you might get stocks and sauces made out of those produce as well, which can have a lot longer shelf life. So really great to see that innovation there as well. And then also at the moment, we've introduced our Felix Bakes operation, working in partnership with Rue, who've given us one of their dark kitchens. So if you ever order from the likes of Deliveroo or Uber Eats or any of those companies, they have dark kitchens working during the evenings to bring you your takeaway food. During the day when that kitchen isn't being used, for the one in Acton in West London, it's now the Felix Bakes facility. So again, really making use of facilities that there anyway. That obviously does reduce environmental impact. But what it means is we can now take new and different food items that previously we couldn't take. We can take a ton sack of flour. We can take specialty sugars and baking ingredients. So if you're someone in the food industry and thought, well, I've got food surplus that could potentially become food waste, it's not something that's easily distributable through charities like Felix. We're looking at ways of like, okay, how can we take those items, turn them into products that our charities in turn can take as well. What it also means that we can add things like carrots to make carrot cake, courgette bread. I think earlier this week we took some catering packs of olives. Not always the easiest thing to send out in catering packs, but we can then take it with flour, etc., and make fresh olive bread. So it's again really trying to be really innovative in what we do. And also, again, that is only ever done through the support of our partners. So we mentioned what we do with GXO, what we do with Deliveroo, what we do with obviously Abel Cole and Bowl Foods as well. Also looking at things like transport. So we have partners who are moving trucks up and down the country that perhaps are only part filled. So they will get in touch with us and say, okay, we've got vehicles moving from this location to that location. Could we also move some stock for Felix as well? So again, rather than having multiple part-filled vehicles doing journeys up and down the country, we're maximising vehicle fill, just making it so much more environmentally effective and sustainable as well. And like I said, if you are a food business, whether you've reached out to Felix before or not, and you're kind of thinking, okay, what can we do with the food that we have? Is it easily rescuable, distributable? Please do get in touch. There's always new innovations that we're looking at as well. And also, if you've got, we never say a crazy idea, if you've got a great idea, we would love to try and attempt doing it. We're very much an organisation that would like to give things a go. If it doesn't work, great, but at least we've tried it. And that's how we're going to, be more sustainable, how we're going to use innovation, collaboration to rescue more surplus food and get it to people in need. Thank you so much to everyone that joined, especially to our panelists. It's your expert insight and knowledge and willingness to share that really makes this series of webinars so impactful and successful. Obviously to our audience as well, a real broad cross-section of food industry experts, those who are curious in sustainability, those who are working with the charities that we in turn support as well. Really hope you found it useful. If you're interested in catching up on previous episodes, they're also available on the YouTube channel. But yes, thank you so much everyone for their time. Just bang on 11, and we will see you again in the future for the next one. Take care all.